Welcome to the Disney Wedding Podcast. This show is brought to you by Carrie Hayward's Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, the only guidebook and bridal organizer tailored exclusively to Disney's fairy tale weddings at Walt Disney World. I'm Carrie Hayward, and each week I feature Disney wedding updates, money-saving tips, and interviews with wedding vendors and real Disney couples. I also cover honeymoons, anniversaries, and engagements at the Disney parks and resorts. Join me now as the Disney Wedding Podcast celebrates romance at Disney destinations. This episode of the Disney Wedding Podcast is also brought to you by Let's Go Journey, a personalized service that shows you how to earn reward points and miles by paying off wedding expenses and then maximize those rewards in order to book first or business class flights as well as accommodations at your dream honeymoon destination. Learn more at letsgojourney.com. Today on the Disney Wedding Podcast, I am speaking with Disney bride Nicole Sullivan about her ceremony at Seabreeze Point with a reception at the attic and a dessert party at UK Lochside in EPCOT. I thought you guys would be interested to hear how she planned everything and how she made all of her choices and how it all turned out. So welcome, Nicole.
Hi, Carrie.
Thanks for being on the show today. I would like to start at the very beginning and find out how you and your fiancé decided that you wanted to have your wedding at Disney.
Well, for us, it was a no-brainer for us. We both grew up going to Disney. Both of our families spent our family vacations at Disney. It's definitely my family's go-to place to go, and Brian's family tried to go as often as they could. So it kind of just became something really important for our relationship. So then we kind of just started going on our own little vacation getaways, and that's how we knew that Disney was right for us.
Now, how did your friends and family react when they found out where the wedding was going to be?
Overall, no one was surprised. They were actually mostly expecting it. A lot of my friends either were like, oh yeah, I would expect that, or they were also very surprised at the fact that you could have a Disney at wedding, and we're just really excited to be included in the experience, to be able to be a part of it.
That's wonderful. How many guests did you invite, and how many were able to make the trip?
I think we invited roughly 55, and then we ended up having about 43 in the end.
Got it. Did you set up a room block for your guests?
We did not. We were debating it at one point, but we ended up using DVC points. So my parents are DVC owners, and so we ended up booking 2 3-bedroom villas, and that kind of was able to sleep a good majority, or about half of our guests that were coming. So we prioritized the bridal party as well as some the immediate family and friends to be able to stay in those suites. And then when looking at some of the other guests, they were able to make accommodations on their own. So that worked out really well that we didn't end up needing the room block.
That's great. How did you guys choose the day of the week and time of day for your event?
Overall, we were kind of flexible with it. At one point, we had decided that we were going to try to do a weekday wedding to try to hit the lower minimums. And then we decided, just based on the convenience for our guests, that we wanted to prioritize doing a weekend, just because it was a little bit easier for our guests to be able to travel, since we are from Wisconsin. So a majority of our guests were all having to make some sort of travel to get down there. So we decided to pick one of the weekends, and we ended up going with a Sunday because it allowed our guests to kind of have that Saturday before the wedding to kind of just be in Florida. We were able to do our rehearsal and didn't have to worry about transportation as much, at least had a little bit more flexibility that way. Then it allowed some people, if they wanted to take a little bit of a longer weekend or a little bit of longer vacation, that it made it a little bit easier to have it on a weekend as well. And then for time of day, we really wanted to prioritize making the day just flow really nicely. And we knew that we wanted to do obviously the ceremony with a full-length reception, and then we wanted to include the dessert party, but we wanted it to just flow really nicely. So we kind of just fell upon that 2:30 time because it made it a perfect way that we could just go from each event, and we could all just kind of travel as a group. And then it was kind of just a full day of wedding festivities.
Got it. How did you guys choose your ceremony and reception venues?
So when it came to the ceremony, that was definitely where we prioritized Seabreeze Point. So for me, with my parents being DVC owners, one of their home resorts is the Boardwalk. So we spent a lot of time at the Boardwalk growing up. So like ever since I was a little girl, I'd always walk past Seabreeze Point and was like, yep, that's where I want to get married at some point. And just love the idea of that venue, of how it doesn't necessarily like scream Disney, but it's just right on the water. And it's just like the perfect venue for Brian and I. So we use that as our like number one priority. And then when kind of figuring out a reception venue, we knew that we wanted it to be kind of in the Boardwalk area, just because we wanted it to be nice and easy for our guests to be able to move from location to location without having to necessarily use transportation. So then we ended up falling on the attic, knowing it was there at the Boardwalk. And we knew that the Boardwalk was really special compared to necessarily like looking at beach club or yacht club, just because of my family's history, but then also for Brian and I, we actually ran into one another on the Boardwalk when we were like in high school before we were even dating. And it was just kind of one of those moments where we were like out by the pizza window and ran into each other when we were on two separate family vacations. And then we also had the opportunity that we could run on the Boardwalk because we did one of the Princess 10Ks together when we were in high school. So we knew that the Boardwalk was definitely where we wanted to prioritize our reception if we could. And we just loved the attic because it was just the perfect small, intimate venue space for us, that we actually also got to have the view of Seabreeze. So to be able to be in our reception and see our ceremony venue along with Spaceship Earth in the background was just one of our priorities to try to figure out for our reception space. When it came time to choosing our dessert party location, we love the idea of UK Lochside because of how intimate and private it is when you're inside a park. And a lot of our guests also said the same thing when they were there, that they just like felt like they were VIP members and they couldn't believe how close we were to actually see like the fireworks show, and they just were in awe of the space. But it was nice to have it so that it was like the perfect size for our wedding party as well, to be able to intermingle with one another, but then also feel like we weren't right next to all of the park guests as well.
That's great. Did you use any outside vendors for the portions of your event that you were able to?
Yeah, so we used outside photography and videography. So we used Root Photography, which we love them so much. They really captured our day so perfectly and made us feel so comfortable along the way. Brian and I felt like we could really be ourselves and felt so relaxed throughout the entire day. But they were able to capture every detail in the best way possible. And they are truly amazing individuals to work with, both from photography, but then also just amazing people in general. And then we also used Trinity Wedding Cinemas for our videographers. So far, we only have our teaser trailer, and we are obsessed with it and love it so much, and we can't wait to see our full film. But then the other part that we loved about them is that they offer live streaming, and we actually added live streaming onto our day as well, because we had some family members either that were actually across the world that could actually be able to come and watch, as well as just some other family members across the country that weren't able to travel and be a part of it. So they got to at least see those main events from the day and feel like they were included with it. But it also gave us the opportunity that even after the wedding, we could watch some of those little clips to be able to kind of relive it while we're patiently waiting for our full film as well. And then I also used Stacy Otto for my hair and makeup. And I couldn't recommend her more. She is truly amazing and made me feel so comfortable on my wedding day, as well as for my park shoots, because we did 2 park shoots and she came both those mornings as well to try to help with my hair and makeup. And she truly is amazing. I could really talk with her for hours and I couldn't recommend her more.
How did you choose your officiant?
So for our officiant, we actually asked my godmother because we wanted someone to be really involved in our relationship and who we are as kind of who got to see us grow as people, but then also got to see me grow up from a little girl. So that was really special to have her be a part of that, and to have someone that we knew being able to perform the ceremony for us.
Wonderful. Did you add any kind of entertainment to the ceremony or the reception?
For our ceremony, we chose just to do a live guitar player, and then we decided to also add them for our reception. So I actually grew up dancing, but Brian is not as much of a dancer. So for us in our relationship to have the like dance floor dance side of the wedding wasn't definitely a priority for us. Instead, we really wanted to prioritize just having like the experience of being in the attic space. So then we just added the live guitar player instead of just having like music over the overhead speakers. We were like, we would love to just have the live acoustic background music, and that guitar player was wonderful. We loved him so much. He did such a great job. But really our biggest piece of entertainment that we did for the reception was something that I didn't even plan for. It was my parents ended up surprising us with Mickey and Minnie. And that was one of those things that my dad was so proud of himself for it, because it's really difficult to surprise me. And my dad did such a great job. We had all gathered out on the patio area at the attic, and he was just like, I think we're missing two people, because we were going to take a group picture, and then in came Mickey and Minnie. And it was definitely just like, you can see some of the like raw emotions from how the Roots captured some of those pictures, and they're truly amazing. One of my favorite memories is then walking up to my dad afterward and just like asking him like, how did you do that? Like I was just so surprised that he was able to pull off such a big surprise. So we had them. So that ended up being really a great addition to it. So even though we weren't necessarily planning for them to be there, they ended up being a great form of entertainment. But then we kind of just, or at least I had planned just some little things for my guests if they felt like they needed something and they didn't want to just sit and talk to people for the whole time. So we created a like timeline activity. So we put little envelopes together that we put on each table of pictures of us throughout the years, because Brian and I have known each other for more than 10 years. So we had pictures from when we like were back in elementary school together to different things in high school. But then it kind of allowed our guests, as they were kind of just sitting and mingling, that they could try to put these pictures in order, just as a small little activity they could do. And then we also, for during the reception, my parents did this at their wedding, but we did what's called Sing for a Kiss. So I had my guests, they had to like come up and either sing us a Disney song or sing us a song with the word love in it for us in order for us to kiss. And it was something that my parents did at their wedding, and I just wanted to continue on with that tradition. So it was just some way that we could try to keep our guests entertained so they didn't feel like they had to just sit and talk for the whole time. Obviously, Mickey and Minnie added a good amount of entertainment throughout the whole time, but just those little kind of things as well, kind of just to add to the reception.
That's wonderful. Do you have any menu items or cake flavors from the reception that you would recommend?
Oh, yeah. So when we were trying to pick out our menu items overall, we wanted to prioritize some of our favorite foods from around the parks or resorts. So we tried to build our menus around that. So for instance, for some of our pre-reception, we chose the cheeseburger spring rolls because we love them at the Magic Kingdom cart. And we actually, I think, like them a lot more at the wedding, but not saying that the ones at MK aren't good, because obviously we chose them for a reason, but it was one of those things that it was just so much better on the wedding day. And then we also added the Skipper Canteen, like cheesy bread from their secret menu at Skipper Canteen. And they were also amazing. And the chefs did a great job at their rendition of it. And it was so good. For our main course, so for the reception side of things, we also did a Sebastian's inspired key lime salad, which was amazing. And we also added the Le Cellier Canadian cheddar cheese soup. And that was also a great addition. And then when it came to some of our entrees that we chose, we did a brisket inspired by Whispering Canyon, because Brian and I love barbecue, and Whispering Canyon is one of our favorite barbecue spots around the resorts, and they did a great job at that as well. And then one of my favorite restaurants on property is Narcoossee, especially since they've reopened here recently after their remodel, and I love their shrimp pasta. So we ended up kind of having the chef's inspired rendition of the shrimp pasta, which was delicious. Our guests really loved the fingerling potatoes for some reason. Just everyone loves potatoes, but that was one thing that they talk about now to this day. As well as we wanted to add just ratatouille, because why not have ratatouille when you're at a Disney wedding? It was like the perfect opportunity for it. And some of my guests also, some of their favorite movies are ratatouille. So that was really special to kind of see them be like, oh my gosh, we're actually eating like ratatouille. This is amazing. And then when looking at some of our desserts when we were at our dessert party, we actually had the chef, he created a like blueberry cream puff, but specifically made it what was called like the Sully cream puff, because with my new last name, but our last name being Sullivan. He wanted to kind of make a Sullivan reference from Monsters Inc. So he made it blueberry, and they kind of made it like a blue and purple theme. So we had those cream puffs, which was really special that the chef created that for us. The overall guest favorite was the cookies and cream Mickey parfaits, which I also loved, but I think my favorite was the Sully cream puffs. And then we also added the zebra domes because we also love Boma, and those are one of my favorite desserts from there. When it came to the cake, Brian and I ended up just doing a cake that was for cutting, and we are just very basic people overall, and decided that we just wanted to do a marble with just some buttercream, and it was just a perfect light and nothing fancy, but it was like the perfect craving or just a really basic comfort food for that day as well.
That all sounds great. At the dessert party, did you add a ride mix in?
We did. So we actually added a ride mix in for Spaceship Earth, just because we loved the idea of having just a really like nostalgic, obviously when you walk into Epcot, like you see Spaceship Earth, and just love that idea of having our guests walk into Spaceship Earth at the end of the night and you get to see it all lit up, and just to have that more of the nostalgic ride at the end of the night. We also just love the idea at the end of Spaceship Earth that you get to build your future. So it was a really special thing for us that like on the end of our wedding night, we were able to sit down and kind of just have that fun little remembrance of being able to build our future together. It's a good way to remember it. But then at the very end, Brian and I also got to stay with the Roots and take some pictures outside of Spaceship Earth. And those are honestly some of my favorite pictures from the night. It was just such an amazing experience to be able to have some of that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say those pictures you got were amazing and worth the price of the ride mix in just for those.
Exactly, yes.
Awesome. Can you give my listeners a timeline of how the day ran?
Yeah, so we started. So within our two grand villas that we had the women were all in one, and then the guys were all in the other one. And at the boardwalk, we started at about 6:30 in the morning. It was more of my mom started getting her hair and makeup done first, just because she wanted to get out of the way and just be done for the day, so that she could kind of just enjoy and kind of see how everything was playing out. I think I started my hair around like 8 or 8:30. And then the Roots showed up around 10:30. And then by then they were kind of just taking some of those detailed shots and some of the finalizing for hair and makeup getting done. And then I think around 11 or 11:15 maybe is when video arrived. And then I was starting to like finish up my hair and makeup around 11:30. I started to get my dress on, I think around 11:45. And then after I got that, I did a first look with my bridesmaids just inside the Grand Villa, and that happened, I think, around noon. This is all also tentative because I had no idea really what general time of day was during the wedding day either. I know that Nate then went down and met Brian and all the other guys down in the boardwalk lobby just to make it easier for them for just like some like staged getting ready pictures. So they did that at around 12:10, 12:15. And then I went down to the lobby to meet with my dad because I did a first look with my dad at around 12:25 or so. And we did that more on the boardwalk inside. So there's the staircase over on the boardwalk inside where we did that. And then Brian and I did a first look around 12:30 maybe. That's where we also did our private vows. Then we just took some general, like, couple pictures. And then around 1:15, we then started taking some of our bridal party pictures, and we did some of those out in the courtyard at the boardwalk inside. But then we also went out at the boardwalk and took some pictures as a bridal party and a couple of different family pictures before the ceremony. The ceremony was at 2:30, and then I think we were done with our ceremony around 2:45, 2:50. From there, we did a group picture outside of Seabreeze Point, which is one of my favorites, to be able to see all of us right outside the ceremony venue. And then we did a bubble exit. And then after that, so probably around 3 o'clock-ish, we did just our immediate family pictures outside of Seabreeze. And then I believe around 3:20, 3:30 is then when they came and escorted all the other guests up to the attic so that they could go up for the pre-reception. And then while they were doing that, Brian and I were still taking some bridal portraits around the boardwalk after the ceremony. And then I think around 4:15, Brian and I had some time just to kind of hang out in the hallway outside of the attic, just as kind of like the two of us. We got to sit out there and just eat some of our pre-reception like appetizers, and just kind of got to have some of that time just as the two of us before we went in for the reception, which I think we went in around 4:30 was our entrance time. And then we did our first dances as well as speeches right when we had entered for the reception. That's also the time where my dad ended up telling all of our guests that we were going to do the ride mix in on Spaceship Earth. And so that was a really special time for us to be able to see like all of our guests reacting to that for the first time. And I also kept it a secret from all my bridesmaids and all the rest of the bridal party. So they were just all like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you hid that from us. And we had no idea. So that was really special to kind of like see everyone's reactions there when my dad told them. And then I think around probably like 4:45, 4:50 is then when the Roots were like, hey, let's go out and take a group picture on the balcony. And then that's kind of when Mickey and Minnie surprised us. So then we spent some time taking some pictures with them. The guests got to take some pictures. And then we also did our cake cutting with Mickey and Minnie shortly after that. To be honest, I really don't know exactly how long they ended up being there. I think we started eating dinner roughly around 5:15, maybe 5:30ish. And then after we were done eating dinner, we then took some more family and friends pictures out on the balcony. So that was more from like our extended family. And then we wanted to make sure that we prioritized getting a picture with all of our guests that were there for the day. So we spent some time taking those pictures. I think we had dinner and alcohol ended at about 6:30. So we had about a half hour. We were kind of just mingling for a little while. And then as a group, we all walked over to EPCOT around 7. And then I think we got into EPCOT around 7:30, which is when our dessert party started. And then we had our fireworks around 9 o'clock. And then shortly after fireworks, I think we were hanging out just for a little while. We were able to kind of catch up with some of our guests. And then probably around like 9:30ish is when we got to walk over to Spaceship Earth. And then we rode Spaceship Earth. And then from there, the guests kind of could either go walk back to International Gateway, or they could go out the front of the park to be able to take other Disney transportation if that's how they were needing to get back to their hotels. And then that was kind of the end of the night for us.
Got it. Okay, I have a totally nerdy question.
Yes.
So you know how like when couples have their receptions at one of the convention centers and Disney does that thing for them where they put them in an empty convention room and they give them a little plate with all of their appetizers and they let them catch their breath. So you're at the attic. There's no room like that there. How did they do this with you in the hallway?
It was kind of like they just had a table outside the hallway right in front of the doors. They just kind of kept the doors shut for us so we could kind of just be standing right there. So we could see the sign for the attic. And we just were kind of just standing there in the hallway, and they were kind of just giving us their space. And they're like, okay, you just let us know and we will let you on into the reception when you're ready.
That's cool. Okay, great. So when you guys were planning, what were some of the most important aspects where you focused your attention and your budget?
Yeah, I definitely think we prioritized making sure that we captured our day in the most perfect way. So really prioritizing the Roots and Trinity and making sure that we included the videography as well as the live stream for some of our guests, but just making sure that we had like the perfect team to be able to really capture the day in the most perfect way. But then in general, we kind of just looked at prioritizing our favorite Disney experiences. So having the venues that we wanted to show some of our guests some of our favorite areas of Disney that kind of reflected Brian and I's relationship. So we're kind of more the people that really love just finding the nice, relaxing areas around property and then just being able to kind of just take in the ambiance from the area as well as like focusing on the views, which we felt like all of our venues that we selected were like the perfect way to reflect us and our relationship, which is kind of just why we wanted to prioritize the capturing it as well as some of the experiences. So
That's wonderful. Were there any aspects that were less important where you saved your money or just your effort?
I definitely think one of the areas was looking at our decor. It just was an area that we looked at areas where we could save money. One of them being that we brought in all of our own personal floral. So I had spent some time here with one of our family friends as well as the moms back at home, and we kind of sat down one day and just put all of the personal floral together. And it also gave me the opportunity to create the Mickey head wreaths that I had for my bridesmaids. It was just something that I had envisioned. That was some small, unique bridal kind of thing that you wouldn't necessarily see other places, but it allowed for my vision in order to come true for us for doing our own personal floral, as well as it just gave us the opportunity to save a good amount of money by being able to do that on our own. The only thing we really added from a decor side of things was we added just some light flower petals down the aisle at Seabreeze. But overall, I feel like Seabreeze doesn't really need any decor. I really only added it with the idea that possibly if for some reason weather were to restrict us, that I would at least have some little decor if we got either put at like the Harbor Breezeway underneath the lobby area of the boardwalk, or if for some reason we got put in a convention center, at least we had a little something for decor. But otherwise I felt like Seabreeze just speaks for itself without needing anything. And the same thing with the attic. The attic has such a unique decor element on its own that I didn't feel like we really needed to add anything. We just added small little florals just for each table, just to give them a little something. But then we also kind of prioritized making some of our own signage as well. So we had little signs on each of the tables, one of them being just like a QR code, because we let our guests kind of upload pictures to this QR code so that we could kind of be able to see how some of our guests experienced the day. As well as on the other side, we had the sign that was kind of explaining the Sing for a Kiss for our guests, so that they felt like they had an idea of what that was, as well as the little envelopes with the timeline. So it allowed us kind of to be able to have one of our guests be able to put those on some tables. And it was just a nice and simple thing as well, just because we felt like it was an area that we definitely could save money, was on the decor and using some of our guests to kind of help us just with some small little items.
That's a great idea. So out of all of this, what ended up being your favorite memory of your wedding day?
Oh, that's definitely a very difficult question. And
your favorite two.
Favorite two. Okay, I'll take favorite two. I know I had talked about my dad's side of things, but that's a runner-up. Overall, besides like just the ceremony and all of the emotions that come with it, I definitely feel like my favorite part was Luminous. I love the show, and being at UK Lochside, I feel like is just like one of the perfect spaces to view that show. And I feel like that show in general just reflects weddings so well, and kind of just telling the story of just the relationship and everything along those lines, but also bringing in all of our favorite like components of Disney as well. But then it just also now has such a special meaning for Brian and I, as well as for my family. Like every time my parents now go and watch the show, they're like tearing up the whole time, and it just brings so many emotions with it. But yeah, I definitely think Luminous was my favorite, but then also just being outside of Spaceship Earth at the end of the night, I think was also like one of my very close seconds at the very end of the night. So
that's awesome. Now, did anything go wrong or just not turn out like you expected?
I mean, not that I know of. That was the one thing that I felt like our day, I can't think of anything that even like in the moment that I felt was like, oh my gosh, that went wrong. I was not expecting that to happen. I think, and either there was something that happened in the background and Disney just did such a great job at covering it up, or they truly just, it flowed just in the most perfect way possible. It was literally the most perfect day. And I am so grateful for everything that Disney did in order to make it flow that way, but as well as just glad that we had perfect weather as well.
That's great. Was there anything that seemed like a big deal beforehand or you were worried about and then it turned out not to be a big deal?
I would say probably was the weather. The weather was not on our side for that day. When it first started, we were expecting a hailstorm to come through. And for me, I was told I was not allowed to look at the weather like leading to like 2 or 3 days leading up to the wedding. So I overall had no idea that there was even a possibility of any of this going on. I found out about all of this after the wedding. I had family members being like, yeah, like we were all like biting our nails just to see if like was the storm going to come through, and we didn't end up even having like a single drop of rain throughout the whole day. So it was just one of those things that I was definitely more worried about it, but ended up working out really well for us. But I know that Disney does such a great job at being able to still make it a perfect day even when weather decides to kind of flip on you. And they definitely are used to that, especially being down in Florida with all the unexpected rain showers that can occur. but knowing that we also have no control over the weather. So it's just one of those things that's why I stopped looking, because I realized I was like, whatever happens, it happens. And there's nothing I can do to try to help with that. So that overall tried to help with my general anxiety with all of it as well. And then I feel like overall, just like our day of team, I was never really told who my day of team was going to be. So I walked into my rehearsal just not even knowing who was going to be at my rehearsal. Luckily, the Disney coordinator that was at our rehearsal was also going to be there for the day of. So that was a perfect opportunity for us to be able to meet, kind of talk through the day if there was anything that I was concerned about. But it was really nice to be able to meet face to face before the wedding so that we could kind of get all of that stuff out of the way as well. And Disney ended up blowing it out of the park and have no bad things to say from our day of team in any way. So that was definitely one of those things that Disney knows how to plan, and they are the pros, and they will make it all work out in the end.
That's so great to hear. Is there anything you would have done differently knowing what you know now?
Honestly, I don't think so. We definitely, thanks to your podcast, your wedding guide, as well as just some of the Disney wedding groups on Facebook as well, we're able to determine what like some of our favorite components were to our big day, and make sure that we prioritized what was important to us in order to stay in our budget. And I feel like everything that we chose and how the day planned out was honestly the most perfect thing it could have been, and I wouldn't have changed anything.
Fantastic. Now, I love the tip about not looking at the weather. Do you have any other tips or advice for future Disney couples?
The one thing that Brian and I are so fortunate that we did on our wedding day was like neither of us looked at a clock. We didn't look at our phones. We fully like disconnected for the day, and it really gave us the opportunity to just like live in every moment. And there are so many times that like I can just like mentally picture what happened on that day of, and it overall made the day, I feel like, go a little bit slower, which is kind of weird to say, but I think it was just because we were so immersed in the environment and not being distracted by any technology or anything along those lines, or even just like what time it was. I wasn't stressing about making sure that I was getting somewhere at XYZ. I was like, I know I have all the people to help me handle that. So I would really just try to be as disconnected as possible on the day so that you can be fully present in the events that are occurring, and just so that you're there with your significant other and just being able to live in that moment. But yeah, other than that, just really trying to like trust the process. So if there's anything that really seems to be bothering you from either from a Disney side of things, or if you need any guidance, feel free just to always like reach out. At least from my side of things, if anyone ever has any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out. Or I know there's probably hundreds of other Disney brides that would also do the same thing, that if you ever need any help and need any advice, we're always here. As well as really just trust Disney, because they really do know how to make the most perfect day possible for you.
That's great advice. Well, Nicole, I think you've offered tons of great tips and advice for anyone who's interested in getting married or having a vow renewal at Walt Disney World, and I appreciate your taking the time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
That's our show for today. I'm your host, Carrie Hayward, inviting you to join me again next week for another episode of the Disney Wedding Podcast. Past shows and tons of photos for each episode are available on my website, DisneyWeddingPodcast.com, or listen in your favorite podcast app. And for instant answers to all your Walt Disney World wedding questions, check out Carrie Hayward's Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, available as an interactive ebook with continual free updates at fairytaleweddingsguide.com.